The reason there is no slavery in the world today, I mean, there's a lot of slavery in the world today, but in the parts of the world where there's no slavery, is because the British Empire ended it. That's why there is no slavery.
Hello guys, my name is Prince Josh and you are welcome to today's video on my channel. And please, if you've not subscribed yet to my channel, please do well to click on the subscription button and don't forget to also activate the notification bell so that you can always get videos alert whenever I release new ones. And please don't forget to like and share this video across. Okay, so in today's video we'll be having a discussion about this topic that's recently been making waves on the internet, and it's all about slavery. Who invented slavery? So this question has been thrown. Even some people, it gets some people confused as to who actually invented slavery. So before we continue the conversation, I would like to allow some videos to roll so that we can have a background study of what we're talking about. And then don't forget to continue this conversation on the comment section. Tell me what you think about this video in the comment section. So camera roll.
White people didn't invent slavery. In fact, they were the first to end it. Yet somehow, saying this is controversial. Watch what happens when someone says it out loud.
The reason there is no slavery in the world today, I mean, there's a lot of slavery in the world today, but in the parts of the world where there's no slavery, is because the British Empire ended it. That's why there is no slavery. That is... Well, look, the fact that you are uneducated about history doesn't mean it's funny. So let me educate you now. Let me educate you now. I know that the woke narrative and the anti-Western narrative on slavery... Oh, you're not practicing free speech very well, are you? You're not practicing free speech very well, are you? The moment I say something you don't like, you're not practicing free speech very well, are you, sir?
Let's be clear. Slavery is evil, but it's an ancient human evil, practiced by everyone, to everyone. 4 years ago, I went to Ghana. I stood in a slave dungeon where people who looked like me sold people who looked like me to white people. But long before Europeans began the transatlantic slave trade, there was a trans-Saharan slave trade. For over 1,000 years, brown Arab slavers sold millions of black Africans across the Sahara. Then came the Barbary slave trade. In North Africa, Arab and African raiders captured and sold over 1 million white Christian Europeans. China, Korea, Japan, India, every one of them practiced slavery. Europeans did take slavery to another scale when they came to Africa. But it's not because they were more evil, it's because they had the technology to commit evil on an industrial scale. So, which major power stopped slavery first? The British, in large part because of pro-human Christian values. The same values America was founded on. The same values that drove white Americans to fight other white Americans to free black Americans in the Civil War. Values missing in places like Libya, where today you can buy a human being for $400. White people aren't better than anyone else, but they're also not worse. Yet, some black people are taught to hate white people, and many white people are taught to hate themselves. We keep pretending evil has a color, as if less melanin means less morality. That lie makes us ignore history and fuels racial hatred. Right now, much of that hatred is aimed at white people. But why should black or brown people care? Because hatred is a hot coal that we hold in our hand, waiting to throw at another. It burns them, but it burns us too. It turns every problem into white supremacy while defending black degeneracy. And when the pendulum swings back, white people react with hostility, and then they defend white degeneracy. The only way out of this is to stop making morality about the color of people. Because in our capacity for good and evil, we are all equals.
So guys, when this white guy was talking about how the abolishment of slavery and who actually ended slavery, so you kind of see the rebuff from the crowd, how everyone was like against him, like he said something that shouldn't be said. Chill, guys. We actually need to take it a step back and don't be emotional about truths sometimes. Okay, rational reasoning has to do with subtraction of emotion and speaking fact. Just be factual based. That's how you bring out facts. That's how you truths can be said. If you apply emotions, sometimes you subdue the truth, and that's how people get censored out of emotions, and it doesn't really help us, and particularly in the black community, because I see that most persons are truly ignorant about the fact of slavery. This topic about slavery, I've noticed that in the black community in America, particularly in America, most black persons are really ignorant about how everything played out. So I'll tell you for a fact, as someone who is an African, okay, I'm from Nigeria, so I'll tell you the fact as I know it without emotions, okay. So this is it. Slavery actually was ended by the Europeans, okay. Why? Because they had the ability to end it in a large scale. So, but they equally, I'm not trying to, be on the side of the Europeans, because truly they did slavery and they did it in a mass scale, right? Why did they do it in a mass scale? The truth is because they had the capacity to do it. Africans, we equally did slavery. Even in Nigeria, we did slavery all around Africa. Most in West Africa, particularly, there was slavery in Nigeria, there was slavery in Ghana, in Mali, most of the West African countries, including North Africa. Everybody, most persons in Africa, Europe, the Americas, the Arabians, they all practice slavery at one time or the other. Because you are privy to this information about the Europeans, and you're not aware about the slavery in Africa, doesn't make Africans innocent of slavery, right? So they all practice slavery. Precisely where I come from, there was slavery, spoils of war. When clans fight each other, the winner takes it all. They end up taking slaves at the end of the day to work at their farms, to be their concubines, to be maids and all of that. So slavery happened. And come to talk about the transatlantic slavery, which was, the most talked about slavery. Most persons has forgotten that even the Arab at some point practiced slavery, even in a very large scale, particularly in North Africa. So talking about the transatlantic slavery, because it's the most recent one and it was done in a very large scale. Why? Because this was during Industrial Revolution time when, the Europeans had good capacity to practice slavery. They had the biggest ships. They could ship slaves in a large scale. And that is why it became too popular, because it was done in a large scale. But who were they buying it from? It was from Africans. The Africans, how slavery actually happened was that these Africans actually sold their fellow Africans to the Europeans to buy gunpowder and all of that. Some persons so different because different things. All right, they were selling each other. They were selling each other black persons in Africa here to the Europeans, and then the Europeans used theirs to develop their, use them to work in the farms and all of that. And these guys, because they had better inspirations on how to put slaves to use, and they did it very horribly. So that's that, and everybody should frown at slavery anyway. So here are some information you should equally know about slavery. Pro-European African slavery. Before European colonization and the Atlantic slave trade, many African societies practiced forms of servitude. However, these were usually different from the chattel slavery seen in the Americas. War captives. People captured in wars between tribes or kingdoms were sometimes kept as servants or integrated in the victor's community. Debt bondage. People could become servants if they owed debts. Criminal punishments. Convicted criminals might be forced into servitude. Social status. And now, in some cultures, being enslaved did not always mean permanent loss of freedom. People could sometimes marry into the owner's family or gain freedom over time. In many pre-colonial African societies, enslaved people could own properties, marry, and their children might be free, which is different from hereditary slavery in the Americas. So at some point, different people practice slavery in different forms. And now, African rule in the trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean slavery. And now this was before the transatlantic slavery, okay? Long before Europeans arrived, there were large-scale slave trades involving African captives, trans-Saharan trade to North Africa and the Middle East, run mainly by Arab traders transporting Africans across the Sahara Desert for domestic work, military service, or concubinage. Indian Ocean trade. Slaves were sent from East Africa to Arabia, Persia, India, and even China. African kingdoms such as Mali, Songhai, and later Omani influenced Zanzibar, participated in or benefited from these trades. Now, African involvement in the Atlantic slave trade. When Europeans began buying slaves for the Americas around 1500 onwards, some African rulers and merchants became middlemen, and this is around the African kingdoms like Dahomey, Ashanti, and Oyo raided other areas or accepted slaves from wars to sell to European traders. Then they often traded people for guns, textile, alcohol, and other goods. It's important to note that the scale and brutality increased dramatically because of the European demand, transforming slavery from a smaller scale system into a mass transatlantic human trafficking network. Domestic slavery in Africa during the colonial period, even after the Atlantic trade ended in the 1800s, slavery continued in parts of Africa. In some areas, slavery were abolished under the colonial law but persisted illegally for decades. Some African societies continued to use slaves for farm work, household services, or concubines. So, if you have a voice and you truly want to end these forms of slavery, or you were pained at the slavery of the past, you can put your voice into use about the ongoing modern slavery that still happens all around the world, not just in Africa, all around the world. Different patterns of slavery still go on low keys. And this is not mainly talked about in the media. You don't often hear this. But if you do your due research as well, if you do good research, you find out about this, talk about it. And if somebody says a truth, because a fact or a truth does not go well with your emotions or the perspective you feel about life, it doesn't make it false, all right? Don't talk bad about someone or talk down on someone because they stated an obvious that doesn't go well with your belief system or how you feel. Emotions don't detect facts, all right? That's what I've got to tell you. The truth is that on a large scale, the British, they did slavery on a large scale because they could. And because they could influence the end of slavery. They did too when morality took over and took better part of them. They saw that, man, this is not gonna stand the test of time. And by the grace of God, it's officially ended with their influence, and then the Americas. So thank you guys. If you've watched this video till now, thank you. I'm very grateful. Please do well to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you guys.